Hello to our listeners in 2022. It's a brand new year, and we are back with a brand new episode of Mic'd Up with Mars. Last January, Affle's Mars team started this podcast with the aim of bringing unique voices from our industry for our clients, partners, friends, and our readers. Today, the podcast is heard by listeners from over 150 cities and 30 countries. As we continue to engage with experts from across the globe, today's episode is a special one. We call it the two in one pack. We have with us the top minds of Affle's business and tech side. In today's episode, you will hear from Anuj Kumar, co founder and CRO at Affle. He's joined in discussion with Ankit Rawal, Senior Director, Sales and Marketing at Mars.
Welcome, Anuj. Welcome to our newest edition of Mic'd Up with Mars. It seems like yesterday that we started this podcast. It's already been an year. And what an year 2021 was, right? Like from the meme stocks mania, which we saw early in 2021, to selling of Beeple Akka Winkleman's art for 69 million, to Ariana Grande performing virtually in Fortnite. And the whole buzz around Web3 metaverse was really exciting. Even for here at Mic'd Up was an interesting year gone by. The podcast has become an important industry platform where we spoke to industry thought leaders all the way from US to Vietnam, across verticals like fintech, gaming, education tech, to some of our very important agency partners across the globe. So maybe that's how we can start, Anuj. We can reflect a little bit about how's the year for you, 2021. Reflect a little bit about Affle and Mars and how's been the last year for you.
Thank you so much. I think 2021 was quite a exciting year, I think, in terms of what the world was going through. So I think it was clearly the year where the pandemic ruled and most of the engagements which people were having with different companies was all happening digitally. And I think that has given kind of a non-reversible change which has happened in the digital economy where consumers have lapped up to digital trends much faster than what they would have done naturally. I think what's also been quite dramatic in 2021 is how we see that the entire industries themselves are being disrupted. So if you look at today, e-commerce, you look at music streaming, you look at video consumption, you look at fintech, any industry you look around, I think it's going through significant amount of disruption, which is evident with the amount of new startups which are coming in these industries, and also evident by the kind of availability of quality funding available to these startups. So I think it's a very interesting phase that at one end you have entire industries being disrupted around how consumers are engaging with them. At the other end, you have technology innovations which are always on in an industry like ours, where obviously there are many things which you also recapped which are happening, which are changing the paradigm around how consumers will engage with their devices going forward. And between that is the entire mobile advertising related business model where Affle has been working, and I think that's where we have seen significant growth momentum continue in 2021, and I think that's largely come in on the back of our focus of ensuring that we can talk to consumers in the languages which they communicate with through our vernacularization focus, verticalize our business strategy so that we can align ourselves better with different companies and industries who are working with us. And I think all of that is leading to a significant growth momentum in our business and overall within the industry, fueled by both global changes around consumer adoption and also obviously some of the accelerations getting fast tracked with what's happened on the pandemic.
No, absolutely. I think COVID has really been an accelerator of many of these digital technologies. But curious, would you want to understand also how did Mars fit into the overall scheme of things for Affle for the last 1 year, and how do you see it panning out for the next couple of years and more?
I think Mass has obviously had a significant change. I think we had many upgrades on the platform happen in this year. And the way we look at Mass is a unified platform for marketers to uh, engage and acquire with new users. And if you look at any business, whether it is a digitally first business or even a non digitally first business, the most important growth objective for any business is to look at how they can appeal, engage, and acquire new consumers for their business. And I think that's what Mass has been doing. I think we've obviously revamped the platform, integrated it with the overall DMP proposition of Affle, and I think that's where the Mass platform today is providing a amazing growth platform where marketers across the world are using it, which is being powered by the good data for Affle's DMP platform, ensuring that the bad data, which is also a problem in our industry, is getting weeded out through our fraud detection platforms, and creating a unified way where they can engage users and have a unified dashboard where they can actually manage and see the kind of impact different channels are having for their overall marketing and growth strategies. So I think it's been a dramatic year 2021, and in terms of how we have seen the business and the growth for the Mass platform evolve, and I see that trends continuing in future also.
Absolutely. One of the other ad nauseum for 2021 was the Apple ATT, right? The app tracking transparency framework with iOS 14.5, which required apps to actively gain user content consent for tracking via opt-in mechanism, right? And it played out like it was called out as apocalyptic event in the beginning of 2021, and obviously it did not happen. People are still opting in. We are seeing able to do measurement on iOS. So wondering how do you think it played out in 2021, and how will it have any impact in 2022, if any?
Cool. I think overall, if you look at it, what's driving the entire change which Apple made on IDFA? And I think it's largely the whole intent to looking at a privacy first world. And I think that clearly is the need of hour, and that's happening across the world, led by regulation, led by technology. And the IDFA changes which Apple did was actually one step like that. Even the other regulatory changes which have come in from the governments have also largely tried to tackle the same problem. And obviously, when it came in, like any change which comes in, I think there is always a lot of anticipation, a lot of pre-work which goes into it. I think we saw a similar rush which happened a few years ago when the GDPR came in, which was the first
Yeah.
large-scale privacy regulation which was implemented in Europe. And now there are versions of GDPR across many markets and many more which are in progress. So I think it was pretty much like that, where there was obviously hype, anticipation, and what was important there was that the power of what data to be shared with whom was being given back to the consumer, which I think is very very important, because for all consumer-led business models, and obviously advertising is one such model, clearly having a privacy first approach is very important. And I think largely that was the problem which IDFA led changes on the what was called ATT within Apple framework was all about. And I think if I look back, what 2021 was that these changes came in the initial days, people were not so aware, not so sure of how many people will opt in. But I think we have seen that the opt in rates across markets, obviously they vary, but those numbers have been growing. And also as marketers, clearly that while opt-in is important, and when users are opting in, that's where the marketer can have a deeper view and a better attribution to their marketing spend. But even where consumers are not opting in, or on apps they are not opting in, marketers have worked out ways around ensuring that they can minimize ad wastage by more contextual advertising and trends like that. So I think the way I see it is that obviously there was a lot of expectation. It's still work in progress, it's not completed. But I think the early trends of that are that marketers have learned to uh, navigate their lives around ATT. Consumers are accepting it, at least in some of their app interactions, and some of them they are not. And then marketers have figured out a way to engage with them. Overall, I see that the intent is like, the way to look at it is that today as consumers, all of us are glued to our mobile devices, and we are spending more time on that device than any other device which we may have access to. And till the time that trend continues, and I don't see any short term challenge there, I think marketers will be forced and incentivized to spend on that medium, which is where the eyeballs are. So I think changes like GDPR, like IDFA will continue to happen, But if the overall macro trend of consumers being glued to this handset continues, which it will, clearly marketers are smart to figure out ways to ensure that they can connect, engage, and impact consumers while being privacy centric.
Yeah, absolutely interesting. And maybe this is a perfect segue to the next segment where we want to do a crystal gaze of what to expect more in the ad tech or app marketing for 2022, right? So, if you have to watch out for certain trends, and how do we distinguish between the fads and forever themes? What are those two or three themes which you think will stick in 2022 and beyond?
So I think what we were mentioning earlier, I think the entire focus on privacy, I see that continuing in 2022 and beyond. And I think it will happen, it will continue to happen through various changes. So I think that is, but overall, I think that will make the industry more mature and also ensure that companies which are deeply rooted in a privacy first, consumer first approach are the ones who are winning. So I think that trend which we saw in 2021, I see that continuing in this year. I think the other thing which at least I'm seeing which will impact a lot of ways in terms of how digital advertising continues to grow is largely the trend of programmatic everything. So if you look at it, earlier digital advertising went programmatic with mobile and PC-based any format of digital advertising being programmatic. And now if you
Mm-hmm.
look at it, many other media, whether it is what's happening on audio with programmatic audio, what's happening with the entire TV space getting disrupted with CTV and that allowing for programmatic advertising. And similarly, even some of the oldest media formats like out of home getting disrupted
Mm-hmm.
with digital out of home being transacted programmatically. So I think what I see happening is that we are moving towards an era of programmatic everything, where any kind of advertising across media which you would be consuming with increasingly will be connected or transacted through programmatic technologies. What that does is that one, that the transactions become much more efficient because it's being done on a bid based environment like the digital advertising has already been seeing. But what it also does, it creates a much greater impetus for marketers to look at multi touch attribution across media. And I think that will be a growing trend. I think 2022 will be a place where we'll see things changing, but I think this is a long term trend where more and more media will become programmatic and measurable and allow marketers to measure deeply each part of their marketing spend. So I think that is the other area where I see a lot of changes and growth happening. The third area, which is again something which is ongoing, is the focus on vernacularization. I think if you
Mm-hmm.
look at it across markets, like traditionally, internet across the world started out as a text and a English internet. Obviously, all
Yeah.
of us understand that bulk of the world does not speak that language, and over a period, internet evolved into text-based internet and in local language. From there, it moved on to video-based internet in local language. And what I see is that going forward, the vernacularization of the internet is continue to go at a rapid pace, which will impact both how ad tech moves, how app marketing moves, because for most apps today out there, the next set of 50, 100, 500 million users which they are targeting are the ones who might have greater vernacular affinities versus the standard few top languages. And I think that vernacularization trend in terms of every piece of content or advertising we consume, I see that as clearly on a growth trajectory and no reason for that to change in the years to come. So I think that's a third big area where I see change continuing to happen. And the other one is more a macro factor which I see, which is with the evolution of or the adoption of 5G, which is happening at which is expected to fast track in this year 2022 across the world. And I think that is a dramatic game changer for many digital industries, because what 5G is doing in terms of internet bandwidth, what it does to video consumption, what it does to gaming, to the entire concept of virtual reality or mixed reality is becoming part of what we are doing. So I think that again is a significant disruption, which I think we have sowed the seeds of that in 2020. And I think the greater growth trajectory for that will happen in 2022, 2023, and pretty much this entire, at least the first half of this decade, will be around how consumers adopt to 5G and how that changes how consumption of products is happening, and obviously marketing and app marketing will need to evolve with that. And the other part I see, while all of this is happening, while there is greater growth being fueled by technologies like 5G, where there is greater vernacularization, which is making content and advertising more meaningful. At the same time, I think the role of measurement will also become absolutely much more critical. Measurement,
Mm-hmm.
both from the trend of the overall programmatic everything, which I talked about, but measurement also from the point of view of how you can start ensuring better tracking of ROI for all advertising you do. And obviously moving from click through attribution to view through to multi touch, I think there are many changes which are happening, and I think that measurement itself will also evolve, especially given how different media might have certain nuances of measurement, and how the unified view of the consumer is what will matter to the marketer, and thus measurement across all of this will be critical, and unifying that, I think, will be a large area where we see growth and growth trends starting to happen in this year. So I think overall, super excited. I think we are at the right moment in time where change is happening at a rapid pace, not because technology is available, but because
Mm-hmm.
technology is being adapted at a very rapid pace. And I think there is a big difference in that. You can have availability but no adoption. But here you have availability, and anyway, as soon as things get available, consumers are lapping onto it because this is the device they are kind of spending most of their waking life with. And I think that's where it's a very exciting place and time to be in the industry, where the mass platform is, where overall mobile advertising is, and I think that's where super excited about it.
No, absolutely. And I think on a lighter note, you talked about unification, and here at Mass, we pride ourselves to unify multiple channels across, from ad networks to influencer marketing to, for example, OEMs, etc. So that was definitely music to our ears at Mass. One of the other trend which you mentioned, which actually sparked another thought, was around everything is programmatic media, whether it's out of home or even TV. One of the other trends which we saw was in 2021 was there's a lot of M&A action where some of the non-traditional M&A companies started doing advertising, right? So we had retailers like Walmart to Instacart start looking at ads. DoorDash, for example, started doing ads on their platform, and then players who would not even imagine, like Zoom and Klarna, are also launching ad network, right? So everyone is becoming like an ad network. So can you tease apart this trend, and how do you see panning this out in 2022 and beyond?
So I think the ad funded internet is the model in which internet has thrived, while subscription models across media are growing. But I think the large part of internet is and will remain ad funded as we know it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where any company which has got uh, a large consumer footprint will need to look at having an effective advertising strategy, because that's advertising strategy will allow it to scale, and especially in developing markets, because in developing markets, clearly, while they will have a segment of subscriber audiences which will continue to grow, but the larger mass of population is where people would want free experiences which are ad funded. And I think that is where we are seeing a lot of these companies moving into ad funded models, which is always interesting for the overall digital advertising economy. The other thing which I see is the entire omni channel consumer engagement. So, from a purchase journey which was either online first or offline first in across categories, I think that entire online offline space has merged. And if you look at yourself also, when you're walking into a mall, where you have decided to walk into a mall to buy things in physical retail, many times when you are in physical retail, you are on your phone checking out what is the offer, maybe making a change that you went to a mall to buy something and you decided to order it from your favorite marketplace online because you found a better deal or a better collection out there. And the same thing is happening on online first journeys. So I think the consumer's life is blending. It's blending between the times we are spending on the device versus what we are doing in physical interaction. And I think that is creating ways in which traditionally companies which saw them as physical experience first are realizing that their consumers have lapped up to omni-channel experiences, and that is where they need to adapt and change their business models, because increasingly more and more consumers are going to engage with them digitally, or even when they're engaging with them physically, they'll be engaging with something else digitally. And that is where having a digital first approach in whatever they do will be important. And I think this is a interesting trend and clearly a proof of the fact of the pace at which consumer adoption and change is happening on digital.
True, true, true. Great. So again, I think a perfect way to transition to the last part, and this is where we make it a little more fun. So the way we'll structure this, Anuj, is we'll do a rapid fire where we'll give you certain questions and expect a short answer to some of it. So are you ready for the rapid fire?
Sounds good, let's go for it.
Yeah. Among all these trends you mentioned, if you have to highlight one buzzword for 2022 in our space, what would it be?
I think vernacularization would be a key buzzword. I think it'll continue. It's already had its impact, and I think with the kind of growth internet is expected to have in the emerging markets, I think that will be a very, very important growth driver, together with video, which anyway is been a growth driver over the last few years.
Yep. Outside ad tech, which technology or which things need to we watch out for 2022?
I think adoption of 5G and immersive gaming, which would come in much more accessible to consumers at large. I think those
Mm-hmm.
will be very, very important. 5G is the enabler, whereas the interactive gaming experiences, because gaming, if you see, has largely driven, like, a lot of changes which have happened on the internet have been led by gaming. So even the adoption of 5G, I feel, will be very much gaming will be one of the early adapters. People who are into that will be early adapters for 5G, and that will also be the way in which the consumers will navigate into more augmented reality, mixed reality kind of experiences, which clearly a lot of there is a lot of investments happening across the world. And with Web 3.0, with decentralization, I think a lot of that will get fast tracked starting this year.
No, absolutely. I think with Roblox or Fortnite, we're already seeing early signs of that really maturing. So the question is not whether; it's a question of when. True. What about a quote or a book do you live by?
So I think I've always believed that change is the only constant, and I
Mm-hmm.
think especially in the kind of industry where we are working with, and I don't see it like only our any tech-led industry is only going to continue to change, and I think enjoying that change is most important. And I think even for ourselves, as we started out as a company which was focused on mobile advertising in a consumer first model almost 16 years ago, and we have seen the world evolve from a Nokia Blackberry's feature phone to where we are today, talking about 5G and consumer trends on gaming and everything programmatic. So I think we've seen, and I think change is the only constant. So sit back and enjoy, and continue to read and upgrade your skills. And I think that's what will keep you relevant always.
No, absolutely. Change is the only constant. What's your secret ingredient to build sustainable revenues?
I think doing simple things. So I think I feel it's very, very important to build a from a culture standpoint, because you might have certain answers, certain insights, but I think the win for any company is a team victory. And I think that's where building a culture where you have bright people who are being having the freedom to think, innovate, and act. So I think if you do that well, I think there is much higher likelihood of you building a company which can be sustainably growth oriented. I think we've been fortunate in that we are being blessed with a lot of good people who treat Affle as their own, and I think that spirit of entrepreneurship, together with the intelligence of what's happening in the industry, fuels change, fuels growth, and I think that to me is most important. If you build the right culture, you will create ways for yourself to continue to grow sustainably and innovate, because one part of a great culture is to be accepting to accept to change. And I think that is again a sign of maturity and a robust culture where you are not falling in love with what you do, but always looking to embrace new things and changes.
Yep. I know you love doing what you do, but say in an alternate universe, you would want to be something else. What would that be? That'd be really fun for our listeners to know.
Alternate universe, and I've not thought so much about my life in an alternate universe, but other than that, I enjoy what I'm doing. I would love to be sitting on the beach and doing that, but clearly want to be close to technology and new trends and what's happening. So at least for now, that's what keeps me most excited and motivated. So even if I am in an alternate universe, I see myself trying to do that, or possibly learning through what the growth has been on those universes versus where we have been residing till now.
True, true. Thanks, Anuj, again for a scintillating discussion and a perfect way to kick off 2022. It was really fun having you on the podcast, and I'm sure we'll do this again next year, same time, and reflect on how did the year pan out and what were some of your trends which happened the way we had forecasted, and what were some of the misses. But again, thanks for coming on Mic'd Up at Mass. Looking forward to host you soon.
Thank you so much, Ankit. Thanks, everyone. Wish you guys all the best, and let's make this year an even better year for ourselves and for the industry at large.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anuj, for joining us today, and thanks to our listeners who have continued to tune in to Mic'd Up with Mars over the past year. Stay tuned for a surprise week as we bring to you yet another guest for our 2-in-1 episode.